can't hear you!
I can hear you!
And we're live. Happy 4th of July, Doc. God bless America.
4th. America, fuck yeah. For real.
What the fuck is a kilometer? Let's go, baby.
I know. I love America, and I'm very pleased to be here with you on our 250th anniversary. So there you go. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for coming on.
Anytime.
This is going to be fun. We're talking 250 years or more of American poetry, because the first poet we're going to talk about died in 1672.
Well, America has a warm-up period, you know?
Mm-hmm.
We got going a little bit before we got going, so.
That's right. But before we get deep into it, I want to talk about what is American poetry exactly, and what makes an American poet.
That's a good
Do you
question.
have any? Yeah. So to kind of give an outline for that real quick, I want to talk about two poets real quick, and we'll kind of just have a little conversation about that. Let me just get her. Make sure I got her name right. First American. What was her name? Phyllis Wheatley. Okay, Phyllis Wheatley was an American slave. She was sold from West Africa when she was 7 or 8. Was purchased by a family in Boston that taught her to read and write. Found out she loved poetry, bought her some books and poems, and she started writing poetry, and was the first African-American woman in America to publish anything. And she died 1784 before we even had the U.S. Constitution. Then we have poets like T.S. Eliot, who was born and raised in America, went to Oxford, I believe it's Oxford,
Yep,
had dual citizenship with London in England, and spent the majority of his life, I believe, in England, France, and Germany, more than he did in America. Either one of these American poets? Are they both American poets? What makes an American poet? Doc, any ideas?
Well, it's a good question. And I think it's a question that doesn't have maybe like a hard and fast answer, because a lot of things in the humanities don't. I mean, remember that nothing here is scientific, right? There's no formula for this. I would say, for me, to be an American poet, first off, because I'm Tolkienian in my outlook, I think it starts with the language. So bare minimum, you have to have written in English. Now that doesn't necessarily, that's one of many ingredients, but first up, you have to be writing in English. English is I'm friendly towards other languages. Obviously, I've studied many and will continue to study many. And I'm not saying that you have to, like, for example, right? Like there's Texas Germans. Are they Americans? Yeah, but they're also Texas Germans. They speak German at home, right? They're kind of their own weird third category. I love them. God bless the Texas Germans. But like if someone were to write poetry, right, in German, but coming from Texas, then they would kind of be like a Texas German poet, right? Which is, I guess, kind of American poetry, but our lingua franca in the United States has always been English, and it always will be English. And so I'm not like diehard English only, but I think that you must know it, right? Like to be from here. And so really then so first off, you have to be writing in English. And I would think you need to be writing in English in a time period wherein English speakers were in, what is now the United States. And I would think that you would ideally need to be writing actually being low. if you were, let's say this, if you came from somewhere else,
Mhm.
you would then need to be writing in English in the United States and be sort of connected somehow in your life to the life of this place. And in the case of T.S. Eliot, it's a really tricky question, right? Because
Mhm.
like he's Anglo-American in the true sense of like spending a lot of his time in England, or maybe the European continent in general, but specifically England, right? Being formed in England. Is he an American? I mean, or is he an American poet? Let's say, since that's the real question. I tend to view T.S. Eliot really more as as a British poet, or maybe not British, but definitely as an English poet.
Yeah.
It's not more like connected back to England sense. But I mean, obviously he comes from Missouri, right? So we have to, and origin stories matter. I don't know if they're everything. Let's say this is, again, so not an answer, but this is how tricky it is. I would say T.S. Eliot is very transatlantic. He's a transatlantic poet, but he's a transatlantic Anglo poet. I think he kind of, this is maybe a cop-out. I would say he belongs to both, right? I think he belongs to both.
Well, here's a fun one. Edgar Allan Poe. Never left America, clearly American, but so Gothic. You want to, his poems don't feel like Walt Whitman or Robert Frost poems.
Yeah, I would say.
So he's clearly American in every way, but his poetry does not feel like the rest of the American poetry corpus, I guess, would be the word.
It's a good point. We've talked about him, or at least we've talked about, the American Gothic, the American, grotesque. We've talked about that before. I would say Poe is American by way of France. And what I mean by that is that he's clearly in conversation with the sort of like the Grand Guignol, French grotesque, French, that sort of that proto horror genre that was coming out of France, right? Where like the horror theater, for example, right, of Paris in the 1800s, and as I like to point out, Poe was better recepted in France initially than he was in America.
Really?
Yeah, that's my understanding at least. And so Poe is weird, but I would still say Poe is just so American, because remember that to be American is to not exclusively have ties back to Europe, but it does come, and we come out of a place, right? We come out of a handful of initial cultures that sort of do undergo ethnogenesis, right? And do so using English as their language, but obviously there's contributions from all over, right? And so it's this weird thing. It is very tricky, right? And I don't want to just take your entire intro here and run with it, but I will say, Paz from Scarlet Thread Society and I were talking about this once, somewhat recently. And Paz made a good point that America is not just an idea, but it's also not just a place. It is both, right? Because just because you are here does not automatically make you from here, right? But you can't just believe that you're American and automatically become American, right? It is both. It involves kind of like an investment in, I would say, maybe in the American project. So maybe America is more of a project than an idea. Maybe that's
to actually tie this back into what we're talking about on your podcast was the sacraments.
Yep.
There's you can hold the Constitution, but unless you believe in it, and you can hold the Declaration, but unless you believe in it, you can be a part of America, but unless you believe in it, there's an aspect of willingness and faith in the American project that I think is required to be an American.
Maybe we could even say a sacrificial attitude of giving, like you're giving back, right? Giving back to. And it doesn't have to be even like in a big, grand historical way. It could just be like, I'm going to make my neighborhood, I'm going to really invest my time, energy, and life into this idea. So, I mean, I would say that based on that, maybe both of those poets could be considered American poets, right? Like, it's a tricky question, but it's a good question.
Yeah, I don't plan to have an answer for it. I figured that'd be a good way to open it up with. And
sure.
What exactly is, because America has produced a surprising amount of poets, and whenever people talk about poetry, they talk about French poetry, German poetry, English poetry. We don't really get brought up in the conversation, but at the same time, if I went around and polled people and said, "Hey, do you know who Robert Frost is?" I'd probably get like 5 people. But if I said, "Hey, there are 2 roads before you. Do you take the one less traveled?"
Right.
How many people are going to get that? Not even just in America, you know? Like there's something about some of our best poets and poems just transcended being geographically defined because America exports this culture. That poem has been exported everywhere.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's on yearbook quotes in London, you know?
Well, and this is a thing too, you get this particularly in the context of the broader Anglosphere, because does Shakespeare also belong to Americans? Does Shakespeare also belong to Canadians?
Listen,
Australians?
I say Rome belongs to America, so I'm going to include Shakespeare as well.
There you go. Yeah, it is interesting when we I know it's difficult to maybe overly conflate nationality or origin with tradition, and because the traditions oftentimes move around, right? And are clearly connected back to a place and a people, but also continue to move. And this is the thing, like who gets to own Shakespeare, who gets to own any of these, you know, authors or poets or whoever we're talking about, right? It's purposely, I think it's good that it's a little gray, right? It's good it's a little gray, right? Because like you said with Rome, like America's very Roman in many respects, right? Like consciously Roman and unconsciously Roman as we're experiencing now.
I mean, there's no greater example than Washington. You know, they're liberally trying to be Cincinnatus.
Oh yeah, I just want to go back to my farm.
Why I love Washington. It's why I
go back to my farm. Yeah.
It's also, I found out this today. Apparently, there's a conspiracy theory that Washington converted to Catholicism on his deathbed. I found out about this today.
I'm gonna humbly ask all you. I know you're not trad, air quotes, but I'm gonna humbly ask all American Catholics to calm down.
Yeah,
on this.
That was my first thought too. Like, this is a little weird, and I looked into it a bit. I'm like, I don't believe it, but it is fun enough that I might be one of those conspiracy theories. I go, you know what? Just because it's fun.
I will say, you know, Washington was a pretty strong Protestant, and pretty committed. However you feel about this, pretty committed Mason too. So that does not mix well with Roman Catholicism. So on a purely historical level, I just don't buy that at all. But you know. I have fun schizo theories. I'm not going to tell people they can't have their schizo theory. I'm just no. It's a theory that Shakespeare was also somehow Catholic. I'm like, please just relax.
Yeah.
Like,
no, that one I don't try to claim that one. But I will say the amount of uber American types who try to say Catholics can't be a part of America because of our dual loyalty. It would be fun to start schizo posting about Washington secretly being Catholic. Just in response to that, it would be fun. No, yeah,
there always has been American Catholics.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes all Catholics American, though. And that's my kind of perhaps sidestepping of that issue. But it is a true point. Like, of course, there's American Catholics, right? But they have to buy. Again, you have to buy in. Maybe not religiously, but at least culturally, right? Yeah. You have to have the work ethic. You have to have some ideas. You have to make them work within your Catholicism, and it's not impossible. You can do it. Many people have.
There's many great American Catholics. There's a great book. I think it's called The Continental Achievement, and it's just a history of a Catholic achievement in the pre-America, Revolutionary War, Civil War, and I think it ended in World War I. It's a pretty good book. But enough about American poetry. Enough about what makes an American poet. Let's start reading some American poems.
Sounds good.
And so for the listener, I'll give you a heads up. These are going to go chronologically. I'm going in order of the person's life who was alive. So we're going to start with 1600s, then move into 1700s, 18, 19. We don't have nothing from the 2000s. The latest one we have is from the Clinton administration.
Hey,
mainly because after that, I think everything in America kind of transitions into being slam poetry.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to read one of those. So I was stopping.
We could read a millennial cringe where we say fuck every 5 words. So
that makes me so mad. That millennial thing of having, if I say fucking enough, it's gonna make it more convincing. And somehow it works on some of these people. It's just enough. We can't get in that rabbit hole. But this first one, this is from Anne Bradstreet, 1612 to 1672. Was one. Very great. I'm a big fan of hers. Let's read one of her first poems. This is called "To My Dear and Loving Husband." If ever two were one, then surely we. If ever man were loved by wife, then thee. If ever wife was happy in a man, compare with me, ye women, if you can. I prize thy love more than the whole mines of gold, or all the riches that the east doth hold. My love is such that rivers cannot quench, nor aught but love from thee give recompense. Thy love is such I can no way repay. The heavens reward thee manifold, I pray. Then while we live in love, let's so persevere that when we live no more, we may live ever. I gotta say, one thing I love about this poem is the American "we're better than you" kind of thing is already seen here. And if man were ever, if ever wife was happy in a man, compare with me, ye women, if you can. See, hits the "if you can," like American exceptionalism, 1600s.
Yeah, well, I mean,
love that.
Our exceptionalism comes from somewhere, and so if I can wax poetic for you tell me when to shut up. So, a lot of people talk about, the Victorian. So this much later, but this will connect couplely back. Is that there was a in England coming out of the English Civil War, there was a kind of a blending in order to make peace with everything. There was a blending of the Puritan and the Cavalier together. Mm-hmm. And that the idea is that this eventually produced the Victorian gentleman, that he was he was responsible and hardworking like a Puritan, but he had a sense of that there could be some frivolity, right? There could be some sense of joy, a little bit more the Cavalier side. It's interesting in America because the Puritans come over here, and then while they don't necessarily have Cavalier opponents, they do have sort of everyone else, right? Who's coming over to America, perhaps not for such explicitly religious reasons. Mm-hmm. And there is sort of an attempt there has to be kind of a balance that's struck. It's an uneasy balance, you could say, right? And this balance, by the way, that's struck totally does correspond to north-south divide on the East Coast, right? You get sort of the more Cavalier tideland, you get the Scotch-Irish interior mountain, and then you get kind of the Puritan New England, right? And you get kind of the more cosmopolitan New York, right? That these are kind of, cultures, subcultures, maybe in tension. They could all be English speaking, but are not necessarily the same thing. They have ties back to the old world, but are definitely kind of doing their own thing in America. So with the Puritans, right? Or let's say with American exceptionalism, clearly there is some some English Puritan roots to that, right? To be great, to prove that you are elect, right, was what it would have maybe probably originally been more of, right, for the Puritans. To prove that you were one of God's elect would be to hold yourself to an incredibly high standard. The Protestants were not antinomians, right? they had a real sense of like, we must prove, right, that we are the shining city on the hill. And
I'm about to say, I would love to have you on to go through John Winthrop City on a Hill, his sermon. That'd be a fun podcast.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, again, I'm not Puritan in of myself. I mean, but I admire Puritans, right? Whether they be American Puritans or English Puritans, and obviously
I have a lot of respect, but not really admiration, if that makes sense.
I'm learning to admire them more and more. I mean, is firmly middle of the road via Medea, neither too high nor too low church as I am. I mean, I can look at the low churchies, right? The Puritans, and I can say, all right, maybe clearly misguided in some things, but a real profound faith, right? Like a faith that really is completely all consuming. And you see that in these Puritan writings, whether they be from the colonies at that point, right, or back home in England. There's a real sense of my faith and being great at being Christian must be my number one concern, right? Like, or in this case, to be a loving, dutiful wife, right? Like there's a real sense of vocation. And in a world where our work really seems to mean almost nothing, where the money we earn from our work almost seems to me completely worthless, I think that there's something that Puritans have. I'm not saying we need to become Puritan. I'm just saying, right? Like there is sort of a spirit, is what I would call it. I think you as a Gen Z would probably call it vibes. There's something about them that I think we could probably need to repurpose, reuse in a slightly different direction, but it's not all bad.
No, not at all.
Doing a good job is important, right?
Yes.
Being a good version of yourself is important. Yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Yeah.
I gotta say, I really do like this. Back to on the poem itself, some of the rhymes here. Like, my love is such that rivers cannot quench, nor ought my love from thee give recompense. Like, I do love some of the rhymes in this one. Some poems, I know poems don't necessarily have to rhyme. You know, there's different forms of poetry. I'm simple enough that when a poem does rhyme, I'm like, oh, I like that. That's a good rhyme. And I did really like the quench to recompense. That was clever.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Despite now you remind me what year this came out. 1670.
1670 something. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting if I can just talk about this and say I have a little bit of chops in this. So, the pronunciation that you used or that I would use if I read this is going to be very different than the original. The original pronunciation of how this would have been, like if Anne were to have stood up and performed this, would have sounded different. But it's interesting that despite all of the almost 400 years, almost not quite, but almost 400 years of gap, the rhymes still work, which is kind of cool. So that even though we are pronouncing it relatively differently than she would have, it still rhymes. It still works for us. You do sometimes find. I mean, Shakespeare didn't primarily rhyme, but at little points in his writing, right? And he's about 70 years, 80 years before this, fine. Some parts he does rhyme, right? Shakespeare has a rhyme every once in a while. And it's interesting because sometimes if you pronounce Shakespeare or any really English from this time period as a modern English speaker, you kind of lose the rhyme. Sometimes if you don't do the original vowels, but here it actually in the Broad Street poem, it doesn't matter. Even with modern vowels, it still rhymes, which is neat. That's cool, right? That
is cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how they would pronounce recompense or certain words?
I can actually, you know what? If you'll bear with me, I can crack open. Hold on a sec. I have it here. Look at that. It was preordained before all worlds. I have this on my desk. I'm going to look up. Can I shout out David Crystal, who is a Welsh linguist? He has the Oxford Dictionary of Original Shakespearean Pronunciation. You keep talking. Let me look if I can look up here recompense and see how this would have. I believe Shakespeare uses that term. I want to say he does. And so we might have, let's see here if it's in this recompense. We may or may not have it here. Reckoning, reclaim. Oh yeah. Recompense. What is going on here? 1 second here.
No problem. Take your time.
Yeah, keep going. I'll try to find it here. I'm reading through here. Yeah.
So while you look through that, I gotta say, he had a bunch of poems. Again, for anyone listening, this is Anne Bradstreet.
I found it.
Go ahead and just look up Anne Bradstreet. Read some more. I'm only picking one poem from each poet, but go ahead and look her up and read some more of her poetry. I found her to be very good. Okay, go ahead, Doc.
It would probably be something like, so I'm literally looking this up in the dictionary right now. Recompense. So a lot like recompense, but recompense. The vowel on the r would be a little bit higher, so it'd be more like a re as opposed to a r, but mostly the same. Recompense. Yeah.
Very cool.
Nor aught but love from they give recompense. Something like that, probably. So yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay, this next one is everyone's favorite founding father, Benjamin Franklin. How to get riches. I love Ben Franklin, dude. He's just such a fun guy. And sings in the moment, on thyself depend. Not trust too far thy servant or thy friend. With private views thy friend may promise fair, and servants very seldom prove sincere. What can be done with care performed today, dangers unsought of will attend delay. Your distant prospects are precarious, and fortune is as fickle as he's fair. Nor trivial loss, nor trivial gain despise. Molehills is often heaped to mountains rise. Weigh every small expense and nothing wasted. Thousands long saved amount to pounds to last. I gotta say, I do love Ben Franklin. This is one of his few poems he wrote. This line here: and sings a moment on thyself depend, nor trust too far thy servant or thy friend. With private views thy friend may promise fair, and servants very seldom prove sincere. He's definitely a fun guy. You know, I don't know if everyone knows, but later in his life, apparently, he got so big, he had people carry him around in a little, which is just awesome. Colonial America being carried around like a Roman aristocrat. It's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, there's the kind of I have mixed feelings. I don't hate Benjamin Franklin, but I have mixed feelings. There's a trueness to him that is just kind of like okay, but a little Redditor in him.
Yeah,
but there's a gregariousness too that I can't. Again, I got that cavalier side. I'm like, yeah, I can see that kind of. I mean, he's terminally unfaithful, and that's a problem. But that's it's like, hey, I can't hate him. I can't hate Ben. I probably should, but I can't hate him. I can't hate Ben Franklin.
Who was your favorite founding father?
Growing up it was Jefferson, but I really think this is going to be so fucking boring. It's probably Adams.
Okay.
I think Adams just has a middle of the roadness to him that like grounded, wanting to have liberty, but wanting it to kind of work and wanting to actualize liberty and maybe not go like, we could have this and we could have that. Right. But will we ever? Right. Like I don't know. Adams. The more I learn about Adams, the more I like Adams. So that's a boring answer, but for me,
it might be controversial with some of the listeners, but it's either if we're going strictly like American founding fathers, it's Hamilton. If we're including what I would consider his founding fathers, it's Lafayette. I sneak Lafayette in as a founding father because I think he was crucial to the war effort. Washington loved him, and the fact that he was buried with soil. He was buried in France, but they brought soil over from Bunker Hill, so he was buried in American soil. That's just awesome.
It's great. Yeah, again, I think I said it on the episode we recorded today. In terms of founding fathers, I mean, I think I have to go Adams, but like in terms of like one of my favorite big time Americans, it's Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah, I'm a big Teddy Roosevelt fan. So
I do love Teddy Roosevelt.
I mean, but he's really more of a modern American, right? He's sort of bringing America into the modern age. So he's I think a little bit more. I mean, obviously we should study the founding fathers, but I think that Teddy has a lot to say to us now in this moment. And obviously the founding fathers do too, but I think that,
the quote, I think the paraphrase, or maybe quote exactly, I can't remember. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been shot, but don't worry, it takes more than that to kill a bull moose.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, really, I think it's just that, like, if anything, it's just that like Teddy was a callback, right? Teddy was a callback to a kind of American that we had during, like, really more at the founding, right? Someone who's really willing to sacrifice and suffer. We've talked about that, right? For America. And so, Clarence Thomas, that video has been going around Twitter, right? Of like, I'm willing to die. Like, I'm willing to die to be part of the process. And you see like Biden's just complete puzzlement. I don't know if you've seen that video going around, right? It was like, I'm willing to die to be part of the process, right? Like, it's just like to be on the bench. It's like, I'm willing to give my life for that shit. And like, people in that room are like so uncomfortable because that idea is just so foreign to a lot of people, right? Like, there's something that you would die for. It's like, yeah, there's an ideal that's bigger than myself that I'm willing to die for.
Yeah.
So, yeah. In any case.
Next one. This is from Phyllis Wheatley. This is the slave girl who was emancipated by the Boston family I was talking about earlier. On being brought from Africa to America. 'Twas mercy brought me from my pagan land, taught my benighted soul to understand. There's a God, there's a Savior too. Once I with Dempson never sought nor knew. Some view our sable race with scornful eye. Their color is a diabolic dye. Remember, Christians, Negroes black as Cain may be refined and join in the angelic train. I love it.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, so I guess what I'll say is, not to get your whole channel shut down, I have to be so careful how we phrase this. There is, I think a lot of times Americans in the conversation around who is an American and who becomes an American and how people do that. There's this idea again that like there's this idea of automatic, right? You set foot in America, you come out, you're born in America, now you're American. It's like, there's like a civilizational aspiration, right? That I think is part of America too. And so I mean, maybe this is where I kind of am going to do yet another instance of Doc Brown via Medea, where I'm kind of, I'll definitely piss off the wokesters, and that's really fun. I mean, I'm not opposed to, no enemies to the right. I don't have overt enemies. I have disagreements, right? I think that the idea that anyone can come here and become American is not a thing. The idea that no one could become American historically is also not a thing. And however, and so I feel like there is tension there. There probably should be tension there. I think that this poem grasps that. The poem is willing to call out, like, the evils of non-Western cultures, right? To be blunt about it, or maybe let's say not explicitly Christian cultures, right? It just that very much is. I mean, so if she's being sold to a Massachusetts family, I think you said Boston, makes sense. Yeah. That's very Puritan. This idea that like we're. And historically, it's interesting because the North always had a weird relationship with slavery, right? Like because they were clearly benefiting from slavery. The idea that only the South benefited from slavery is a complete fiction. The idea that only anti-slavery sentiments were found in the North is also, or were never found in the South, is also a complete invention, right? Yeah. The truth is that everyone basically realized that for a large part of early American history, the way financial viability was kept was at least partially through slavery. That's an uncomfortable. People were always a little uncomfortable. Well, some people were fine with it. Some people were uncomfortable about it, right? Yeah. There was this idea that throwing the baby out with the bathwater was kind of a new invention, right? Or a new idea. The idea that we needed to destroy America in order to rebuild it was a very for a lot of Northerners before like a certain period, 1840s or so, would have been seen as insanity. It's interesting. It's interesting to see a perspective of someone who was an enslaved person, but actually was like, thank God I was sold out of Africa, right? There's a frankness to that I think a lot of maybe a lot of Americans would do well to at least entertain, right? That maybe because again, it's a point that's been hit. The horse is very dead, but we're going to keep beating it. How were people sold into slavery in the first place, right? They were sold into markets that were from other people, right? Like slavery is bad. I'm not a fan of slavery, but how we as Americans deal with social evils, right? Like how do you do that? It's a tricky thing. Do you want to destroy the fabric of your nation and or your government in order to do that? People can make arguments for why we should, and this is really what I'm pointing at is a civil war here, but I don't know, right? Like the truth is always more muddled and muddied, and right? I don't know. Anyhow, it's cool to hear perspectives of this case, an African woman who was like, thank God I was sold into slavery. Obviously, it turned out well for her in a way that it probably didn't for others. But
I love her line here. Remember Christians, Negroes black as Cain, maybe were fined and joined the angelic train. Love that. Just it'd be wonderful.
Well, and it's an idea that you could theoretically become a thing, but not without change, right? So there was, and this is also, I'm thinking of at least part of. So I am very Scotch Irish. We've talked a lot about that, but there is a whole part of my family history that is also sort of Ellis Island immigrant. I'm very much a mixed, right? I'm very much an American experiment, right? I've broken out of my containment chamber, and I'm an American experiment and an American werewolf. Beware. But like, there's a whole part of my family that was like, Central Eastern European. Early 20th century comes over, right, to the United States, and there was, they're like I always say, they achieved the American dream. They got to become Anglos, right? They changed their last name. They became Protestant. Sorry, Catholic bros, but they became Protestant, right? I'm not saying that's required. I'm just saying it's part of it. It helps. It helps, right? It's like a check sheet. How many checks do you have, right? Well, that's a help. That's a big check mark, right? Change your last name, learn English, become Protestant. You wouldn't know, right? Really, a couple generations later, that they were ever anything but, heritage Americans. I would argue, right? They blend in very well. As Paz has said, and I have said on a recent conversation, if assimilation is done right, you almost don't even notice it, right? Obviously, that's easier to do if you can pass, sort of like talking about skin color. If you can pass, if you're white enough, that helps you, obviously. But there was a sense of that you were supposed to do that, right? There was a level of social conformity you were supposed to hit, right? In order to stop being, in case of my family, dirty bohunks or Polacks or whatever, right? You were supposed to
supposed to assimilate or something.
Assimilate, right? And I mean, I will say too, right? Like my history is messy. My family history is messy. There were sections of my family, both sort of the more stereotypical heritage American side, who were engaged in less than reputable activities. And there were some of the later additions that were engaged in somewhat less than reputable activities. We have some fun stories of, I actually had a relative imprisoned at Folsom State Prison in California for like some sort of insane, he was fencing something for the mafia or something like that. He was a Polak working, there was some sort of weird, strange sort of cross-pollination of criminal stuff. So obviously it's not without its hazards, right? You're going to get all kinds coming in if you let people in, such as history. I don't know. I like to think of myself as pretty damn American, right? Like, so it can work. That's my point, right? You just have to you have to want it to work. The people coming here have to want to be here and actually truly be American. And the people here have to actually want them. And if those don't, if that equation isn't, the conditions don't exist for that, you're never going to get that. And this is just a long way of saying we're really into a period now where there's never any requirement, right? There's never any trial period. And I know you're an Aquinas guy, right? And so Aquinas talks about this too, right? Like there's a process of becoming. Anyhow, it's cool to hear a voice from the past that is very keenly aware of the process of becoming, So anyhow, that's my reactions.
No, it's definitely an interesting poem. When I was looking through a poem, here's a bunch of really good ones, honestly. I was trying to find one that wasn't too long, that was going to be good for the podcast. And the moment I found this one, I'm being brought from Africa to America. I'm like, this is either going to be really good or really cringe. And it was really good.
It reminds me, only because I've been watching the show for the first time. I'm sorry, guys. I've been busy with doing grad stuff. But, once you get your PhD, you can go do the rest of your life. I've been watching Sopranos. And I finally got to the episode, the Columbus episode, where Montel's like, the Middle Passage, you can't compare the Italians to the blacks, and it's just, I just think of that episode, right? Like, who gets to be, and then of course Tony's great monologue at the end. It wasn't because of where you're from; it's because of you. You did that, Silvio. You were the one doing that, right? And I think that that's also a very American idea too, right? It's like, you have your historical circumstance. Okay, what are you going to do with it? Right? Like, what are you doing with it? So, yeah.
Okay. We're going to jump up to 1800s. We're going to go into the Civil War poem I got.
All right.
This is from Abram Joseph Ryan, Catholic priest out of Maryland. He was a chaplain in the Confederate Army. This is his poem, The Sword of Robert Lee. Frost from its scabbard, pure and bright, flashed the sword of Lee. Far in the front of the deadly fight, high apostrophe ER. Doc, you're a language guy. How would I pronounce that?
I'm pulling up the poem here. Just give me 1 second.
No problem.
It's or.
Oh, okay.
High or.
High o'er the brave and the cause of right, its stainless scene like a beacon light. Lead us to victory. Out of its scabbard, where full long it slumbered peacefully, roused from its rest by the battle's song, shielding the feeble, smiting the strong, guarding the right, avenging the wrong, gleamed the sword of Lee. Frost from its scabbard, high in the air, beneath Virginia's sky, and they who saw it gleaming there, and knew who bore it, note to swear, that where that sword led, they would dare to follow and to die. Out of its scabbard, never hand waved sword from stain is free. No pure sword led braver hand, nor braver bled for a brighter land, nor brighter land for a cause so grand, nor a cause a chief like Lee. Force from its scabbard, how we prayed, that sword might victor be. And when our triumph was delayed, and many a heart grew so afraid, we still hoped on while gleamed the blade of noble Robert Lee. Force from his scabbard all in vain, bright flashed the sword of Lee, 'tis shrouded now and ceased again. It sleeps the sleep of our noble slain, defeated yet without stain, proudly and peacefully. I picked this one because I'm a huge fan of Robert E. Lee. I think Lee was one of the greatest Americans. I love Lee. His letters are great. His strategy was great. His life was fascinating. And I wanted to find a good Civil War poem, and I thought, the Sword of Lee. Let's go. I got to say, the lines here, nor pure sword led braver band, nor braver bled for brighter land, nor brighter land had cause so grand, nor cause a chief like Lee. I love how band land grand. That's fun.
I actually didn't know about this poem, so thanks for bringing it out. Yeah, this is great. I do. Yeah, in my head, I was reading it kind of with a more now he's from Maryland, so it's a little Maryland's interesting, but I'm reading it kind of with a stereotypical Virginian accent, like non-rhotic, right? Yeah. Out of its scabbard, yeah. Never hand wave sword from stain is free. Yeah? No pure sword led braver band, no braver bled for brighter land. And this is kind of how I'm in my head, right? Like it's stereotypical, but like that Colonel Angus sketch from Saturday Night Live, right? Like Colonel Angus, yeah. But it is great. It's interesting. I was struck. So this is written. When is this? 1860 something? I'm guessing here.
Let me look it up. I believe about 1860. I believe.
Okay, interesting. Because a work we've already talked about Poe a little bit. Do you know? So I kind of wonder, purely in the rhyme strategy, just in the rhyme, not in any of the content or any of that, but just in the rhyme. Mm-hmm. It's struck me as very similar to the poem Annabel Lee rather by Poe, Edgar Allan Poe. I don't know if you know that one.
I do know that one. We read it on the podcast actually.
Did we?
No, not you and me. My friend Connor and I.
Oh, Connor. Yeah.
Same podcast, ChesterBelloc.
It's interesting because you get in Annabel Lee at the end of each stanza, there's an E rhyme scheme, and whether it's Lee or me and stuff like that. So there's something very similar here. Now that doesn't necessarily mean, right, that Father Ryan was doing this on purpose, but it is curious, right? I don't know. It could have been maybe he read Poe and it was subconscious. I really don't know. This is something that jumped out at me, is like there's an interesting similarity just in the structure, purely in the poetic structure, right? Which is not to say anything bad about this poem, but it's just curious. So
here's another one from the same, a bit later actually. I'm going to read this poem. I want to see if you can guess who it's about and who wrote it.
Okay.
You're going to guess immediately from the first sentence. Mortally wounded at Chancellorsville, the man whose fiercest charges in fight, whose sword and prayer were long, Stonewall, even him who stoutly stood for wrong, how can we praise, yet coming days shall not forget him with the song. Dead is the man whose cause is dead, vainly he died and set his seal, Stonewall, earnest in air as we feel, true to the saying we deemed was due, true was John Brown of Steel, relentless he routed us, but we relent, for he is low, Stonewall. Justly his fame we outlaw, so we drop a tear of the bold Virginian's bier, because no wreath we owe.
Yeah,
clearly about Stonewall Jackson.
Jackson's my guy. I love Jackson. Stonewall Jackson.
Can you guess who wrote this poem?
No, I'm at a loss for that.
Herman Melville.
Oh, interesting. Well, that makes sense because there's the northern bias against the South. But even the northerner, the bloody Yankees,
they have to just be like Stonewall was. Even the Yankees have to be like Stonewall was the man.
Reminds me of I think an unintentional poetry, but good poetry is oftentimes unintentional, right? Mm-hmm. Because if we think of poetry as a concept, capital C, as a thing that's out there, right, that we can kind of tap into, we're going to get. It's very Platonic, but I feel like this is a safe space for that, right? So there's something like there's an idea of poetry, and you can sit down and be like, I'm going to be a poet. And many times that produces good poems, and many times that produces bad poems, right? If you've ever tried to write poetry,
Yes.
I'm not a very poetic person. I will like make some slop and it just sounds stupid.
Same.
Oftentimes, though, I have said things that are poetic that were unintentional, and I reflect on them after having said them, going, I think I might have stumbled across poetry there, and it was totally not planned. It just was like my real feelings in the moment. Maybe I saw a bird fly a certain way, and it just sort of, I tapped into that deeper meaning, right? Substrata of the world.
There is absolutely something to that when you're confronted with a certain type of beauty, the urge to just have to wax poetically about it becomes stronger, and the ability to write poetry even becomes better.
Well, and so, Jackson's not known as being a poet. But he lives again a kind of a very Calvinist life, different than the Puritans, because it was more of a Scotch-Irish Presbyterian Calvinism, but it was still that there was a deeply spiritual sense of fate, of God's providence, that God was in control of everything, that, God was dictating when he would die. That, he's also kind of known as a somewhat of a neurotic, and I feel with him on that, right? Apparently, Jackson was convinced that citrus fruits were good for his health, so he was always like munching on a lemon or something like that. It's like, which is probably not wrong, right? Like, it's going to help keep you from getting scurvy and other issues. Vitamin C is important, right? So it's just sort of like an interesting guy. And as he is shot by friendly fire, I believe they have to amputate his arm, as I recall. Southern bros, correct me on this. I believe that that's correct. The amputation does not have the desired effect, and he's essentially dying. I don't know if you know his last words, Caleb.
I do not.
Okay, so you have to. Do you know who the American Southern historian Shelby Foote was?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so you have to imagine Shelby Foote saying. I always imagine, since we don't have a recording of Jackson saying this, I always just think of Shelby Foote saying this, right? And if anyone, I'm not going to even try to besmirch the wonderful accent of Shelby Foote. It's a Mississippi accent. I really can't do it, right? But there's this great final line, the final words, as they are recorded at least, of Stonewall Jackson, and here they are. And this is unintentional poetry, and that makes it all the more profound. Let us cross over the river and rest under the shade of the trees. And I mean, this is deeply biblical, very much crossing over Jordan imagery, right? Like I every once in a while, that line goes through my head, and it makes me feel a sense of peace, that regardless of what's going to happen, right? Like the hope, right? The hope is the faith, is that we will cross over the river and rest under the shade of the trees. And, Lord willing, I'll get to see Stonewall. I think that'd be pretty cool. So, anyhow, Melville's poem about Stonewall in his own way, right? Like at least at the end, is kind of a poet, right? And I think that's great. So I think that we should view Jackson in many ways as a warrior poet, even just for that what great final words, just great. It's so deeply entrenched in that Southern soil, right? Like that deep connection to the place and the people that he comes out of. Anyhow, I'm waxing poetic. Look at me go there.
No, that's what to say. It's what the podcast is for.
Yeah.
No, I do love Stonewall Jackson. I just got a giant biography of Stonewall Jackson.
Is it the S.C. Gwynn one?
Give me 1 second. Let me see here. Let me grab it. Okay.
Was it Rebel Yell?
No, it's Stonewall Jackson Volume 1 by Lieutenant Colonel Z.F.R. Henderson.
Okay. Yeah, he's on my. I need to read some more. I need to read one of his biographies. I'm currently working my way through a 2-part biography of Oliver Cromwell, and so that's kind of my current project. But after Cromwell, who I think is really kind of a villain ultimately in history, but Jackson is not a villain.
If you find a good Stonewall Jackson biography or autobiography, I can never remember which one's what. If you find a good book on Jackson, you let me know, and I'll read it as well, because I would love to do a podcast on Stonewall.
Well, I'll probably be reading the one by S.C. Gwynn called Rebel Yell, because I've read another one of S.C. Gwynn's biographies and found it exquisite. So I really like him as a writer.
I almost picked that up. I saw that at the Barnes & Noble. I almost picked it up, but I'm always so hesitant to buy any modern book on the Civil War.
Well, I can't speak to the quality of that book because I have not read it, but I can speak to the quality of S.C. Gwynn as a storyteller. I did not write anything. I read rather his book on Quanah Parker and the Comanches, Empire of the Summer Moon, and completely like was drawn into that one. So he's very good. He is a damn Yankee, but he's a very good storyteller. And so I trust that he will not do Jackson dirty. I trust that he will be measured, because he somehow managed to make Quanah Parker, who was really kind of like a Comanche war chief and probably a terrorist in our modern conception, he managed to make him sympathetic, which was is a feat. But also not sanitize him. So I'm and that's an approach I think to history that I appreciate, right? Like a more measured, honest take, but not with overt agenda. So yeah, I'll probably check out Rebel Yell at some point soon here. Yeah.
Well, if you say it's good, I'll pick it up.
Yeah, well, I'll let you know when I finish it. Yeah.
Okay. Next poem, "The Road Not Taken," Robert Frost. This one came out in 1915. And it's a classic. I mean, I think my graduating class, I think 3 people had one of the quotes from this poem on their like the graduation quote. "Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other just as fair, and having perhaps a better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, knowing how way leads on to way. I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in the wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference." Kind of butchered the reading on that one, but everyone knows it. It's a great poem.
You're good. Now, yeah, it's a total classic. I'm not a Robert Frost expert in any way. I know this one. I think this is probably the only Frost poem I truly know. Or at least I've heard before. I don't want to claim that I know it. It is interesting though. This is what, 1915 you said? I kind of wonder, and again, I'm not saying that everyone, we don't want to read the modern connected internet world back into the past when you could pull up a text at a moment's notice and just find things, or even now, like input something into AI and it can find all the textual, connections. But on the thematic level, at least, it's interesting how Kierkegaardian, we've talked about Kierkegaard. You've had me on to talk about Kierkegaard recently. So I'm bringing it back to Kierkegaard. See what I'm doing there? This is a very Kierkegaardian poem, because talking about, even just the first 2 lines, two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. This, I don't know, have you read Concept of Anxiety by Kierkegaard? I don't know if we've talked about that one.
I've not.
Yeah, aside from Fear and Trembling, that's it's usually a common second book that I would recommend. After Fear and Trembling from Kierkegaard, read Concept of Anxiety. Maybe that's just because I have a lot of anxiety and always have had, and maybe it's just a way of me reading that was a way of handling, learning to deal with things. But this is the book by Kierkegaard, Soren Kierkegaard. The Concept of Anxiety has this famous quote, and it's oft quoted because it's very true. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom, is what Kierkegaard has to say about that. I do see that.
Oh, the dizziness of freedom. That's a great line. I'm
highly recommend. Concept of Anxiety by Kierkegaard is one of his great works. And this idea that choice, right? So to bring it back to Frost's poem here, right? I don't know if Frost is explicitly referencing Kierkegaard, but he's referencing the same idea, the same concept, right? Like when we make a choice, we're constantly making choices, right? We're constantly making choices. And yeah, I know our choices are preordained before all worlds, but bear with me here, okay? And this is a joke, but it's also true. So regardless of whether they're preordained or not, regardless of our theologies about that, we are making choices, at least as we experience them in our life in a temporal sense, right? We live, we were born, we live, and we die. We make choices along the way. You can have 2 things that are actually good, right? Oftentimes, it doesn't always have to be right and wrong. It could just be this or that. And when maybe they're both good things, right? Let's think hypothetically here. We'll be a little bit more positive. They're both things that are not in and of themselves bad. And maybe you are called more to one or more to another, and you have to kind of give up that thing, right? You have to sacrifice that dream, right, for various reasons.
Very clearly, let's see the Catholic listener as an example. Imagine your vocation. Just imagine your vocation as a man, priesthood or family. That's kind of like a good example for this. What Doc is saying.
The Protestant in me wants to say why not both, but that's fine. Not everyone is called to to both. Is what I would say. But yeah, like you have to sacrifice big dreams or little dreams every day, right? Even if it's a dream of how that day is going to go. I want it to be this way. I want it to be that way. I am very locked in. I'm good at planning, but I'm very inflexible. The thing is, I'm really good at adapting and adjusting. I'm great at that, but it stresses me out because I had an idea. And I had the idea was kind of the dream of how that day was going to go. But, oftentimes I'll have days where sometimes I'll have days where everything went to plan, but it was boring. And it was like, it felt like flat because there was not that sense of adventure. And we've talked about this before, you and I, right? The needing a sense of that Bilbo needs an adventure, right? So sometimes it's that giving, you have to make a choice and you have to sacrifice some part of yourself you have to sacrifice a version of yourself, right? By choosing one path. That produces anxiety, but like Kierkegaard would say, right, that's the dizziness of freedom, because the temptation that I oftentimes fall prey to is to make no choice, right? Is to just stay at the fork and not make a choice. The problem with that is you're not really holding on to any more options, right? You're not actually getting anything better. You're getting kind of nothing. You're getting neither A nor B. Right. So you have to be willing to make a choice, willing to sacrifice something to get something more. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, Frost's poem is taking a slightly different path, pun intended, but there is that, there's that sense, right? There's that sense of like longing of the thing that could have been that wasn't. That very clearly is here too. Anyhow, Kierkegaard writes about this. So we've talked about Kierkegaard before. I highly recommend Concept of Anxiety to anyone willing to read more Kierkegaard. He's pretty great.
What I like about Frost's poem, specifically this one, a few of the others that I have read, is how there's clearly a depth to him, but it's readily apparent. It's a simple yet profound poem. There's no having to read between the lines. There's no trying to figure out what exactly the author is talking about. You can read it and go, okay, I get it. It's readily apparent to the reader. I like that simplicity about it. It's a great poem. It's a beautiful poem. Has a great lesson in it, and it's very simple. I could read this to my 5-year-old niece, and she'd be like, "Oh, I get it. I kind of get it." I like that about it.
There's a matter of factness, I think, to Frost, which can cause you. He's been poo-pooed. I've heard some critiques of him for having been so like that. But I don't know. I mean, I think there's something to be said for just saying what you mean. There's something to be said for that. So I know not everything needs to be overwrought in terms of poetry. Poetry can be kind of stripped down. As we've said, all I ask is we just stop saying the word fuck every 5 minutes, right? And this is, that's the lesbian slam poetry that we need to avoid. So
yeah. Okay, this is gonna be another. This is the one I was going to surprise you with. I'm not going to say who does it. I want to see if you can guess this one, because I think you will.
Yeah, we'll see.
I walked through a county courthouse square. On a park bench, an old man was sitting there. I said, "Your old courthouse is kind of run down." He said, "Nah, it'll do for our little town." I said, "Your flagpole has leaned a little bit, and that's a ragged old flag you got hanging on it." He said, "Have a seat," and I sat down. "Is this the first time you've been in our little town?" I said, "I think it is." He said, "I don't like to brag, but we're kind of proud of that ragged old flag. You see, we got a little hole in the flag here that when Washington took it across Delaware, and it got powder burned the night Francis Scott Key sat watching and writing, say can you see? And it got a bad rip in New Orleans with Pakenham and Jackson tugging at the seams, and it almost fell at the Alamo beside the Texas flag, but she waved on through. So you got cut with a sword at Chancellorsville, and so you got cut again at Silo Hill. There was Robert E. Lee, Beauregard, and Bragg, and the south wind blew hard on that ragged old flag. On Flanders, field of World War I, she got a big hole from a burster gun. She turned blood red in World War II. She hung limp and low for a time or two. She was in Korea, Vietnam. She saw what went she went where she was sent by her Uncle Sam. She waved from her sips from a briny foam, and they've about quit waving back here at home. In her own good land, here she's been abused, she's been burned, dishonored, denied, and refused. And the government for which she stands is scandalized throughout the land. And she's getting threadbare, and she's wearing sin, but she's in good shape for the shape she's in. Because she's been through the fire before, and I believe she can take a whole lot more. So we rise her up every morning, we take her down every night. We don't let her touch the ground, and we fold her upright. On second thought, I do like to brag, because I'm mighty proud of that ragged old flag.
That's Johnny Cash.
It's Johnny Cash.
That's Johnny Cash.
Maybe one of the best American poets, if we want to call him a poet.
Yeah, no. Well, this is actually getting to, I think, something that I'm glad you brought this up. So I really think a lot of that, we tend to think of like, oh, American poetry maybe has fallen off and it's just become lesbian slam stuff. I would argue that I'm biased. I would argue one of America's great contributions to, well, maybe the world art, but let's be a little bit more specific, to the English English language verse is actually in our music. Mm-hmm. And Johnny Cash is a great example of this, obviously, but many others too. And I am biased. I think that there's something particularly inside certain genres, such as country music, at least of a certain variety, and folk music too. The sort of the storyteller. There are areas where there's genres where you're still allowed to tell stories. Mm-hmm. Narrative poetry, right? It's easy for us, I think, or we're tempted to poo-poo that because my high school English teacher would have never classified that as poetry. Doesn't matter. It is poetry, mm-hmm. right? And it's part of our folk culture. We've talked about this a lot whenever you have me on. It's part of American folk culture. And it's also part of the American folk heritage. And there's something to that. And so I would challenge people who are finding some resistance to this idea to be willing to think about song lyrics as poetry. And I think that's it will hopefully open you up to the general prevalence of poetry. We still have a lot of poetry. Whether it's good or it's bad is a totally separate conversation, right? To be had. Like, is this band good? Is this bad? And obviously it gets very subjective, just like it is with sort of more traditional printed poetry. But if poetry, I would argue that even sort of a standard traditional poetry that's not song lyrics is still should be designed to be read aloud. Yeah. And music does this explicitly. And so, yeah. If
we're going to include music in parts of American poetry, I think that's valid for a lot of the songs that are like ballads. What is his name? Hold on. Let me just look it up real quick. What was it called? Dance with the Devil by Mortal Technique.
Dance with the Devil. Is this I do not know this one.
Oh, you don't know this one? Okay, you know what? It's a rap ballad. The guy just raps and tells a story. And it is a tragic and depressing story about a guy joining a gang. And it's the guy's a commie and his rest of his stuff is terrible. But this one song is so good, I say it makes the entire genre of rap valid. It shows what rap. It's one of those songs that shows what rap could be if it was only done by experts.
Yeah.
And so I would say this: anyone listening, "Dance with the Devil" by Mortal Technique, give it a listen. It's one of those songs I listen to like once a year, but only once a year. Because if you listen to it too often, it's too much.
Yeah. No. I mean, you can. Yes, I know that you're talking about. There's like the artist, or even maybe a whole genre that you're not a fan of, except for this one thing, right? There's oftentimes there's that one thing. Yeah, I mean, some of the best modern, like in the past 100 years, or even past 50 years, let's say past 100 years, some of the best modern English verse that I can think of is actually just song lyrics. I mean, and they're not all explicitly American, but if like so Echo and the Bunnymen, their song "The Killing Moon" is one of the greatest Gothic poems I can think of. It's up there with Shelley, right?
What's it called?
Oh, "The Killing Moon." but now it's it's British. But I mean, if you want to think about Gothic literature, the Killing Moon by Echo and the Bunnymen, I mean, the song is great, the music video is super Gothic, but like just strip it down to the lyrics, very, very clearly knows what it's referencing. It's building on you know, a whole foundation of Gothic literature. It's a great thing in and of itself. You know, the Killing Moon will come too soon. You know, and that's an example of not American poetry, but from a song. Another example, I was listening to this song today. Now, Robbie Robertson was actually Canadian, and so we'll forgive him for that. But he was playing with this band called The Band. I don't know if you know the band, but very much an American style band. And he wrote this one of the greatest songs of all time, which is The Wait. I don't know if you've heard the song The Wait.
I'm not.
There's a great little lyric in here. If I can, and you talked about the devil. If I can just share this here. I picked up my bag. I went looking for a place to hide. When I saw Carmen and the devil walking side by side, I said, "Hey, Carmen, come on, let's go downtown." She said, "I gotta go, but my friend can stick around." So, I mean, like, there's lyrics like that in songs stick permanently in my head. I was raised around a lot of folk and country music by my dad, who was a folk guitarist in his own right. And so for me, is all these little ditties, these little like lyrics, right? That was really my first exposure to poetry. My dad was not highly educated in like the sort of academic sense, but I still lived around poetry because it always had songs. We were always singing something, right? There was something going on. There was music happening. And again, I really hope that people don't poo-poo even popular music, right? Like if poetry is well done, then it's well done. And if it's bad, then it's bad, right? And I can think of, you know, famous poets who are totally overrated. And I can think of, you know, small little like emo hardcore bands that have some great lyrics, right? It's just kind of, if we're willing to be kind of like Shakespeare, since we've invoked him before, we'll invoke him again. If we're willing to be like Shakespeare and kind of both engage with both high and low brow culture, right? We really see that like poetry is all around us. Americans have produced written a lot of great songs. Yeah. We have poetry. It's just, you know, you don't need to be a stodgy quote unquote poet to be a poet. You know?
Very true.
Yeah.
That's one of the things with poetry. I'll quote Chesterton here. Anything worth doing is worth doing badly.
Yeah.
And so I like to say that to the listeners, because one of the beauties of reading poetry is you will inevitably try to write poetry.
Yep.
And even if it's bad, it's still poetry, and it's still, I think, worth doing just for the sake of it, because it's a good thing to do.
Well, I've written a handful of poems. Maybe someday you'll let me on, and I'll share my horrible poetry.
Hey, I have a host show with the Poetry Corner where I invite friends on, and we just read our own poems. I saw Dead Poet Society and decided to make a podcast out of it.
Very nice. Yeah, I actually I tried my hand at writing Middle English style poetry in modern English, and it kind of worked out okay. So I did some alliterative poetry that maybe if you have me on, I can share it. It's pretty. I don't know. It's interesting.
That'd be fun. I think I know Connor has a few poems he wants to read, so I might try to get you and Connor on for like a ChesterBelloc, instead of reading other people's poems, we just each read some of our own.
Yeah, no, and you know, like you said, be willing to make mistakes, I guess, with it, right? Like, maybe I could even say to Luther, quote, right, sin boldly, just a little bit there, right? Like, I know you have to get better at it by failing at it.
Yes. Okay, last poem. This is the longest one. It's at least almost 2 pages, so bear with me. But this is from Maya Angelou on the Post of the Morning. She read this at Bill Clinton's inauguration. A rock, a tree, and I always want to say a rock, a tree, and a river because how Medea says it, but it's actually a rock, a river, and a tree. I only know about it. I didn't listen. I only know about Maya Angelou because she's friends with Tyler Perry, and she showed up in 2 of the Medea films.
There you go.
And I heard a poem. I'm like, that's actually a pretty good poem. I fell in love with the rest of her poetry. Not a politics, but a poetry.
There you go.
Just incredible. Okay. A rock, a river, a tree. Host of species long since departed, marked the mastodon, the dinosaur who left dried tokens on their sojourn here. On our planet floor, any broad alarm of their hastening doom is lost in the gloom of dust and ages. But today the rock cries out, clearly, forcefully, come, you may stand upon me. Back and face your distant destiny. But seek no haven in my shadow. I will give you no hiding place down here. You, created only a little lower than the angels, have crouched too long in the bruising darkness, have lain too long, face down in ignorance. Your mouth spilling words, armed for slaughter. The rock cries out to us today, you may stand upon me, but do not hide your face across the wall of the word. A river sings a beautiful song. It says, come, rest here by my side, each of you, a bordered country, delicate and strangely made, proud, yet trusting, perpetually under siege. Your armed struggles for profit have left collars of race upon my sore, currents of debris upon my breast. Yet today I call you to my riverside. If you will study war no more, come, clad in peace, and I will sing the songs the Creator gave to me when I and the tree and the rock were one. Before cynicism was a bloody scar across your brow, and when you yet knew, you still knew nothing. The river sang and sings on. There is a true yearning to respond to the singing river and the rise rock. So say the Asian, the Hispanic, the Jew, the African, the Native American, the Sioux, the Catholic, the Muslim, the French, the Greek, the Irish, the rabbi, the priest, the Sikh, the gay, the straight, the preacher, the privileged, the homeless, the teacher. They hear it, they hear all. The speaking of the tree, they hear the first and last of every tree. Speak to humankind today. Come to me here beside the river. Plant yourself beside the river. Each of you, descendant of some past. On traveler has been paid for you. Who gave me my name? You, Pawnee, Apache, Seneca. You Cherokee nation who wrestled with me, then forced on bloody feet, left me to the employment of other seekers, desperate for gain. Starving for gold, you, the Turk, the Arab, the Swede, the German, the Eskimo, the Scot, you, the Asante, the Yabura, the crew, bought, sold, stolen, and arriving on the nightmare, praying for a dream. Here, root yourself beside me. I am the tree planted by the river, which will not be moved. I, the rock, I, the river, I, the tree, I am yours. Your passage has been paid. Lift up your face upon piercing need, for this bright morning dawning for you. History, despite its wincing pain, cannot be unlived, but it is faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon this day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. Women, children, men, take into the palms of your hands, mold it into the shape of your most private need, sculpt it in the image of your most public self. Lift up your hearts. Each new hour holds new chances for a new beginning. Do not be wedded forever to fear yoke eternally. To brutishness, the horizon leans forward, offering you space to place new steps of change here on the post of this fine day. You may have the courage to look up and out and upon me, the rock, the river, and the tree. Your country, no less to Midas than the miscreant, no less to you now than the Macedon then. Here on the post of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out and into your sister's eyes and into your brother's face, your country, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning. I love it. It's a little long-winded. It's got a little bit of like universalism to it. That's a little cringe, but on the whole, I do love this poem.
It is interesting. She references the Sum Sum Corda too, so there's some liturgicalness to it as well. Mm-hmm. Lift up your hearts, we lift them up to the Lord. That kind of thing, right? That's clearly baked in there. I believe she was Baptist. I'm not Southern Baptist. I'm not an Angelou fan, so but I mean, clearly a talented poet. We should always, clearly I could not write a poem this good in terms of its poetic nature and its realization. I disagree kind of fundamentally with a lot of this, but that's okay. I mean, it's people should be doing poetry. I would think I would respect the left more if they were more poetic. So maybe we need more poets. I don't know. And by that, I mean it in the true sense, not the screaming slam poetry. I mean like a real poem like this. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, her politics. I have problems with her politics. I don't think anyone who listens to this won't. But on the whole, I do. There is something. Maybe it's just me being younger and raised in America, but there is something I love about the civic nationalism of anyone can come together and put the past aside and just work on the future. I know it's cringe, I know it's universalism, I know it's shit liberty, but there is still a part of me that's just like, yes, everyone, let's come together, let's be friends. I don't know what it is, it sticks with me.
Yeah, I guess I would say I think I do as a 90s kid. I do hope for that. I would say let's be friends, those of us who want to be friends. I would, and I think, but I guess for me, it's always just like that. If you don't want to be here and you don't want to be, then why? That's, I guess, would be, and I think that you have to have a little bit of, have a little bit of water. You have to water your whiskey just a tiny bit, right? You have to kind of have a pinch of salt and things.
Yeah.
I think Angelou obviously has her perspective on this that is very different than mine, and that's whatever. She is more talented at poetry and more,
She did have this quote. I'm not going to butcher it because I can't remember it exactly, but she gave a speech, and she said when she first read Shakespeare, she thought he had to have been a 6-year-old black woman like her because no one else could understand her pain. But then she realized through Shakespeare the universal nature of humanity. And there is something kind of beautiful to that.
That's great. This is why I think you don't have to be Anglo to appreciate Shakespeare. I think everyone should read Shakespeare, just like everyone should read Virgil and everyone should read obviously the Bible, right? Like everyone should read. There's books that everyone should be exposed to and think about, read through. I'm certain that I could have gotten along well with her. And she strikes me as someone who I would disagree with fundamentally, but still be friends with. Yeah, I'm all for being friends with people you disagree with. I actually think I would prefer that. So yeah, I mean, and in that spirit, I think that spirit flows through the poem, and so that's it's just I would never. It's good. You're forcing me to read stuff I probably wouldn't have read otherwise. So there you go.
Yeah. No, I have a soft spot. I think what it is how do I put this? I have a soft spot for Southern Georgia blacks in a sense when it comes to like their culture and poetry, because there is some like being in Florida, being a Southerner, they're a part of us. They are part of the South, and so when I hear any kind of like, here's an example. I love the show The Boondocks, right? I love The Boondocks. I think it's an incredible show. I hate the episode making fun of Tyler Perry because to me, Tyler Perry is like a Southern guy like me. So the reason of pride in Tyler Perry, even though he's not part of the the white Southernness, I consider him like a cousin almost. Like he's part of the South. This is Tyler Perry. And speaking of that, I want to share this real quick, this little clip here because it's so funny.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Maya Angelou.
Hello, I'm Maya Angelou. And today I will recite a poem that I wrote with my girlfriend Oprah in mind. It talks about the unity and love that we should all share for one another. And it's called Where is the Love?
Excuse me, Miss Angelou.
Yes, what is it, Angel?
Business Affairs doesn't have your check.
They don't have my check?
No.
Oh, really? It seems I will be reciting a different poem today. And this one is called Bitch Better Have My Money.
That's great.
I love Tyler Perry.
I like Tyler Perry a lot too. He's good as, what is it, Alex Cross? His his serious roles are very good too. Like his ability.
Every once in a while, he'll just churn in a really solid movie or performance, and he'll go right back to the Medea films.
I get it. Here's the thing about Medea. Okay, we come from very different places, but we both love God, and we both are strapped at almost all times. And that's if that's not a foundation of Americanness, then what is, right?
I grew up on the Medea films. I even love the stage plays. There is something about Medea. There's the Southern Baptist morality plays from like the medieval age, and how that's how I kind of view them. Yeah, that's just fun.
I confess I've only seen clips. I kind of know about the character. I have not sat down and watched like Medea films. So maybe I should. Maybe that would be good.
There's a couple of great ones.
It just strikes me as a very pro Second Amendment. I can get that, very like, hey, do the right thing. I can get that, Again, I guess in the spirit of, the poem, right? Like working together I'm all for working together with people, I guess the only thing that I would perhaps resist a little bit is but we are all ultimately the same. And I'm like, No,
I just like I've always said this way: we're all every human being is made in the image and likeness of God, but we're not the same image.
And I would say we're all fallen in different ways too, right? We falling is a downward direction, but there's different spirals that you can take, right, as you go. And so, yeah. No, I get it. Yeah, I think that maybe I'm just too. Maybe I'll just call it my own tribe too much, or I'll call it my own tribe here. Maybe I'm just too like chronic depressive, like, Calvinist. And maybe there's just something that's just very, the Southern Baptists, despite being extreme in some ways, have a severe level of joy, which is good.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that it can kind of be overpowering for someone like me who would rather be contemplating the nature of morality under a tree somewhere. Or something
The
like
Baptists
that.
do get joyful. I mean, have you ever been to a Southern Baptist potluck?
Not to a Southern Baptist one, no.
Oh, they are fun. My grandpa's Baptist, and I grew up going to his church for a while. And I still go to the potlucks. I'll still go down whenever I find out they're having one, because it's always good food, and everyone's just so happy to be there. This is happy being alive. It's an infectious joy.
That's something the South has. I mean, again, I as much as I can appreciate and love the South, I am ultimately, it's weird being from the West, because the West is kind of like, we have elements of North and South, but then also a lot of our own stuff. It's just, but I mean, I guess you'd say culturally would probably definitely have more connections to the North, right? If you think about it. And so, but I mean, that being said, I had Texan grandparents, spent a lot of time with them. So I got, I understand that this, Southerners are capable of joy in a way that maybe us in the North aren't. That's maybe weather related. I don't know what exactly, right? You all had less industrialization. We had more industrialization. That's maybe a lot of it, but yeah, no, I mean, I like Medea. Medea's cool. I mean, I'm not opposed. Yeah, and like I said, Maya Angelou is clearly a very talented poet and writer. So she can do stuff I can't do, for sure. So no hate.
Like I said before I even went to this poem, I dislike most of her politics, but as a poet, just great. I love this poem. I almost, because my reading is not as good as hers, obviously. I almost played the video of her reading it at the inauguration, because the way she speaks and the way she delivers it is really well done. Well, that was the last poem. We're out of poems.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. I'm glad we could do this. Thank you for coming on and joining me in this 250 years. Actually, it was more than 250, because we started in the 1600s, but little exploration of American poetry.
Yes.
A lot of fun. And if anyone listening, go ahead and, for listeners, comment below your favorite American poet. Or favorite American poem, even if it's a song or a ballad. Just comment below your favorite poems.
Mine, you already know mine. What
is it again?
The Raven.
Oh, the Raven.
Love the Raven. Again, how American that really is, I don't know, but I just adore. I'll leave you with that. Have you ever, I know this is so not spooky season, but for some of us, every season is spooky season. The Willem Dafoe performing The Raven is pretty great. I think that's like,
I'll have to find out and watch that.
It's Lou Reed. However you feel about Lou Reed, again, separate the artist from the art.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, Lou Reed is doing the music in the background, and it is Willem Dafoe performing The Raven, and it is pretty awesome. So yeah, very not the vibe we're going for, but you know what? Like, there's, as we've said in previous episode or previous time you've had me on, there's a dark, America is great. I love America. There's a darkness though. And we want to look at that darkness a little bit. So we hold these things in tension in our American soul. So some of us like me are looking at the darkness, and some of us maybe more like you are looking at Maya Angelou's hope in the future. And with our powers combined, we can become Captain America. I don't know. Definitely not Captain Planet, but Captain America maybe. Yeah.
But anyway, thanks, Doc, coming on. Where can people find you at, Doc? Actually, before you go, any final thoughts on the poems? Any final thoughts on America? And then where can people find you at?
I love America. I'm really thankful to be American. As I've been saying on Twitter, half my American family colonized the other half of my family, and it made everything better for everyone. So I'm very bullish on America. I like being American. And yeah, people can find me on a couple places. I am on Twitter. At Altphilologe. I'm certain you could write that in the show notes. I didn't think that through when I made the handle. It's in German, but you can find me there. And then also a lot of times, I mean, I have my own show, but a lot of times I'm doing episodes on the Scarlet Thread Society with our mutual friend Paz. And so that's where I'm doing a lot of my stuff. We're currently doing a series on the history of Indo-European languages, and so it's been great fun. So people can check that out if you're interested. Yep. Okay. Well, Doc, thanks for coming on, everyone. Thanks for listening. Happy 4th of July. Let's go, America. Have a good night, and God bless.